The transport ship shuddered as it entered Earth's atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot from the friction. E.A. Krixnakia, once a respected member of the Galactic Council, now reduced to a common criminal, peered out the viewport with trepidation. The swirling blue and white orb below seemed deceptively peaceful, but I knew better. This was Earth, the infamous Deathworld that had become the galaxy's most secure prison. "Prisoners, prepare for landing," a gruff voice crackled over the intercom. "Welcome to your new home." I exchanged glances with my fellow inmates, a motley crew of aliens from various species, all convicted of crimes deemed too severe for rehabilitation on our home planets. The air was thick with fear and resignation. As we descended through the cloud cover, the true nature of our prison revealed itself. Sprawling cities of steel and glass, vast oceans teeming with life, and lush green forests that seemed to stretch endlessly. It was beautiful, yes, but also terrifying. This world, we'd been told, was a crucible of evolution, where only the strongest survived. The ship touched down with a bone-jarring thud, and the doors hissed open. A wave of hot, humid air assaulted us, carrying with it a cacophony of unfamiliar sounds and smells. I stumbled out onto the landing pad, my legs weak from the higher gravity. A group of humans stood waiting for us, their faces impassive. They were shorter than I'd expected, with less impressive musculature than the stories had led me to believe. But their eyes held a hardness that sent a shiver down my spine. "Welcome to Earth, gentlemen," one of the humans said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm Warden Johnson, and this is your new home. You're here because you fucked up, and now you're going to learn what it means to survive on a real planet." I wanted to protest, to explain that my crime was a mere misunderstanding, but the words died in my throat. The warden's gaze swept over us, cold and calculating. "You think you're tough shit?" he continued. "You ain't seen nothing yet. Earth will break you, remake you, or kill you. Your choice." As if on cue, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. I flinched, remembering the tales of Earth's violent weather patterns. "First things first," Warden Johnson barked. "You'll be assigned to work details. You'll learn to farm, to build, to survive in this world, and maybe, just maybe, you'll learn something about yourselves in the process." We were herded into a processing center where human guards efficiently cataloged and assigned us to various sectors. I found myself grouped with a surly Hygonian and a nervous Floxian, both of whom looked as out of place as I felt. Our first task was simple: clear a field for planting. Under the watchful eyes of our human overseers, we were given primitive tools and set to work. The sun beat down mercilessly, its rays feeling like plasma bolts against my sensitive skin. As I struggled to uproot a particularly stubborn weed, I heard a chuckle behind me. A human guard stood there, shaking his head. "You're doing it all wrong, alien," he said, not unkindly. "Here, let me show you." To my surprise, he took the tool from my hands and demonstrated the proper technique. His movements were fluid, efficient, born of a lifetime adapting to this harsh world. "There," he said, handing the tool back. "Now you try." I mimicked his actions, and to my amazement, the weed came free easily. The guard nodded approvingly. "You'll get the hang of it," he said. "Just remember, on Earth, it's adapt or die." As the day wore on, I began to understand why Earth was considered a death world. The constant struggle against gravity, the unpredictable weather, the sheer variety of life forms, some benign, others deadly, all conspired to make every moment a test of survival. But I also began to see something else. The humans, for all their apparent frailty, moved through this world with an ease that bordered on supernatural. They laughed in the face of danger, shrugged off injuries that would have crippled beings from gentler worlds, and approached each new challenge with a determination that was both inspiring and terrifying. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I collapsed onto the ground, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. The human guard from earlier approached, offering a container of water. "Not bad for your first day," he said as I gratefully accepted the drink. "You might just make it here after all." I looked up at him, confusion evident in my expression. "Why?" I asked. "Why help us? We're criminals, outcasts." The guard's face softened slightly. "Because that's what humans do," he replied. "We help each other survive. And now, like it or not, you're part of our world. So drink up, rest, and be ready for tomorrow. Because on Earth, there's always another challenge waiting. As I sipped the water watching the alien sun sink below the horizon, I realized that my re-education had already begun. Earth wasn't just a prison, it was a forge, tempering us in its fires. And somehow, against all odds, I found myself looking forward to what the next day might bring. Welcome to Earth, indeed. The first week on Earth passed in a blur of back-breaking labor, sore muscles, and harsh lessons. Each day brought new challenges, new dangers, and new opportunities to fail spectacularly. But with each failure came a chance to learn, to adapt, to become something more than what we were. It was during our second week that I truly began to appreciate the resilience of humanity. We were assigned to help construct a new wing of the prison complex, working alongside human laborers. The work was grueling, made worse by the constant threat of Earth's unpredictable weather. As we toiled under the scorching sun, I couldn't help but marvel at how effortlessly the humans moved, how they seemed to draw strength from the very world that sought to crush us. They laughed and joked as they worked, their camaraderie a stark contrast to the wary distrust that still lingered among us alien prisoners. One day, as we were laying the foundation for a new building, the sky suddenly darkened. A massive storm system rolled in, bringing with it howling winds and torrential rain. Lightning crackled across the sky, each bolt feeling like it was aimed directly at us. "Everyone, take cover!" shouted Foreman Richards, a burly human with arms like tree trunks. "Move it, you sorry sacks of shit!" We scrambled for shelter, our alien physiologies ill-equipped to handle the sudden onslaught. As I huddled beneath a hastily erected tarp, I watched in awe as the human workers continued to secure the site, seemingly unfazed by the elemental fury around them. Suddenly, a cry of pain cut through the storm's roar. One of the Floxians, Glix, had been struck by a falling piece of equipment. Without hesitation, 2 human workers rushed to his aid, lifting the heavy metal off him and dragging him to safety. "Medic!" Foreman Richards bellowed, his voice somehow carrying over the wind. "We've got a man down!" I was stunned. These humans, who had every reason to despise us, were risking their lives to save one of our own. It was a level of compassion I hadn't expected, especially not on this brutal world. As the storm raged on, I found myself working alongside a human named Mike to reinforce our shelter. His movements were sure and steady, a sharp contrast to my own clumsy attempt. "You're thinking too much," Mike said, noticing my frustration. "Earth doesn't give a fuck about your plans or your hesitation. You gotta feel it, react to it." "How?" I asked, genuinely curious. "How do you make it look so easy?" Mike grinned, rainwater streaming down his face. "Practice, my alien friend. Lots and lots of practice. And a healthy dose of fuck it, let's do this." As the storm finally began to subside, I realized something had changed. The fear that had been my constant companion since arriving on Earth had diminished, replaced by a grudging respect for this world and its inhabitants. The following days brought more work, more challenges, but also more interactions with our human overseers. To my surprise, many of them seemed genuinely interested in teaching us, not just supervising our labor. One evening, as we sat around a fire, another uniquely human invention that both fascinated and terrified me. Warden Johnson paid us a visit. His hard eyes scanned our group, lingering on each alien face. "You've all made it through your first month," he said, his voice gruff, but not unkind. "That's something, but don't get cocky. Earth's got plenty more lessons to teach you." A Hygonian named Krax, emboldened by our recent progress, spoke up. "Why bother teaching us at all? Why not just let this world kill us and be done with it?" The warden's laugh was as harsh as a sandstorm. "Because that's not the human way, you scaly bastard. We don't just survive here, we thrive. And if you sorry lot can learn to do the same, well, maybe there's hope for the galaxy after all." As Warden Johnson walked away, I found myself pondering his words. The human strength wasn't just in their physical adaptations to this world, but in their unbreakable spirit, their ability to face adversity with a grin and a raised middle finger. That night, as I lay on my bunk, listening to the sounds of Earth's nocturnal life, I made a decision. I would embrace this world with all its dangers and wonders. I would learn from the humans, adapt as they had adapted, and perhaps in doing so, become something greater than I had ever been before. Earth was a crucible, yes, but from its fires, we aliens were being forged into something new, something stronger, something, dare I say it, almost human. And as I drifted off to sleep, I found myself looking forward to what new challenges tomorrow might bring. Because on Earth, every day was an opportunity to prove yourself, to grow, to become more than you were. Humanity, fuck yeah indeed. As months passed, our alien group began to adapt to life on Earth. The backbreaking labor that once left us exhausted now felt almost routine. We learned to read the signs of approaching storms, to work with the planet's rhythms rather than against them. But Earth, true to form, wasn't about to let us get too comfortable. It was during a routine maintenance run to one of the outer agricultural sectors that everything changed. Our team, myself, Krax the Hygonian, a silent Vulcan named Thrix, and our human supervisor, Jack, were tasked with repairing an irrigation system damaged in a recent earthquake. As we approached the site, an uneasy feeling settled in my gut. The air felt charged, heavy with an unfamiliar scent that set my nerves on edge. Jack noticed it too, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the horizon. "Something's not right," he muttered, reaching for his comm unit. "Base, this is Team Alpha. We're picking up some strange..." His words were cut off by a series of bone-chilling howls that seemed to come from all directions. From the shadows of the nearby forest, a pack of massive, snarling wolves emerged, all teeth, muscle, and primal fury. "Shit," Jack breathed. "Those are dire wolves. I thought they were extinct." I stood frozen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. These creatures were far larger and more terrifying than any canine I'd encountered before. "Move!" Jack shouted, snapping us out of our stupor. "Back to the transport now!" We bolted, our legs pumping furiously as the pack gave chase. I could hear their thunderous paws behind us, feel their hot breath on my neck. This was it, I thought. This was how I would die on this unforgiving planet. But then something unexpected happened. Jack, instead of continuing towards the relative safety of our vehicle, suddenly stopped and turned to face the charging wolves. "What are you doing?" I screamed, certain I was about to witness the human's gruesome demise. Jack didn't respond. Instead, he planted his feet firmly on the ground, raised his arms, and let out a roar that rivaled the wolves in its ferocity. The pack, caught off guard by this display of defiance, actually hesitated. In that moment of confusion, Jack pulled out a small device from his belt, a sonic emitter I later learned, and activated it. The air filled with a high-pitched whine that made my head throb. The wolves reared back, shaking their massive heads in distress. "Now's our chance," Jack yelled. "Move your asses!" We didn't need to be told twice. We sprinted for the transport, piling in as Jack kept the creatures at bay with the sonic device. As soon as he was inside, we took off, leaving the bewildered pack in our dust. As we sped back towards the main compound, my heart still racing, I turned to Jack in awe. How did you know what to do?" He grinned, the adrenaline of our near-death experience still evident in his eyes. "I didn't," he admitted. "But on Earth, you learn to think on your feet. Sometimes you just gotta stand your ground and hope for the best." Back at the compound, our story spread like wildfire. The other prisoners looked at us with a mixture of fear and respect, while the human staff seemed almost proud. That night, as we gathered for our evening meal, Warden Johnson made an unexpected appearance. His gaze swept over our group, lingering on those of us who had faced the wolves. "Today," he began, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room, "you got a taste of what it truly means to live on Earth. It's not just about the work, the weather, or the gravity. It's about facing the unknown, adapting on the fly, and having the guts to stand up to whatever this world throws at you." He paused, his eyes meeting mine for a moment before moving on. "You aliens came here as criminals, outcasts, but today you proved that you're learning. You're adapting. You're becoming, well, if not human, then something close to it." A murmur ran through the crowd at his words. Was this grudging respect from the notoriously hard-nosed warden? "Don't get me wrong," Johnson continued, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You've still got a long way to go, but today you took a step in the right direction. Remember this feeling. Remember what it's like to face death and come out the other side. Because that, ladies and gentlemen, is what it means to survive on Earth." As Warden Johnson walked away, I felt something shift inside me. The fear and resentment that had been my constant companion since arriving on Earth began to fade, replaced by something new. Something that felt suspiciously like pride. I looked around at my fellow prisoners, aliens from across the galaxy, brought together by circumstance and forged in the crucible of Earth. We were changing, becoming something more than we had been. And for the first time since my arrival, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Earth was still a death world, yes, but it was also a world of infinite possibilities, of untapped potential. And we, its unwilling students, were learning to tap into that potential, one grueling day at a time. As I lay in my bunk that night, the memory of the day's events replaying in my mind, I found myself whispering a phrase I'd heard the humans use countless times before. Humanity, fuck yeah. And for the first time, I truly understood what it meant. The encounter with the dire wolves marked a turning point in our rehabilitation. No longer were we simply going through the motions, counting down the days until our sentences were complete. Now we approached each day with a newfound determination, a hunger to prove ourselves worthy of this unforgiving world. Weeks passed, and our alien group began to gel into a cohesive unit. Krax, the Hygonian, became our unofficial leader, his strategic mind proving invaluable in tackling the daily challenges Earth threw our way. Thrix, the silent Vulcan, turned out to be a mechanical genius, able to jury-rig solutions to problems that would have stumped even the most seasoned human engineers. As for me, I found myself drawn more and more to the humans, fascinated by their resilience and adaptability. I spent my free time poring over Earth's history, marveling at how this species had not only survived, but thrived on a planet that seemed determined to wipe them out at every turn. It was during one of these study sessions that Warden Johnson found me, hunched over a datapad in the prison library. "Enjoying your reading, Krixnakia?" he asked, his gruff voice startling me out of my concentration. I looked up, surprised to see him there. "Yes, sir," I replied. "I was just reading about something called the Age of Exploration. It's incredible." Johnson nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. "Ah, yes, when we humans decided that one death world wasn't enough, so we set out to conquer the seas." "But why?" I couldn't help but ask. "Why take such risks when you had already carved out a place for yourselves on land?" The warden chuckled, pulling up a chair beside me. "That, my alien friend, is the essence of humanity. We're never satisfied with good enough. We always push further, reach higher, dive deeper. It's what's allowed us to not just survive on this planet, but to bend it to our will." I pondered his words, thinking back to my own species' cautious, measured approach to progress. How different might our civilization be if we had embraced that human drive to explore, to push boundaries? My musings were interrupted by the blaring of alarms. Johnson was on his feet in an instant, his hand going to the communicator at his belt. "Report!" he barked. A frantic voice crackled through the speaker. "Sir, we've got a situation at the eastern perimeter. The recent tremors have destabilized the ground. We've got sinkholes opening up, and they're getting bigger by the minute. If we don't do something fast, we're going to lose the entire east wing." Johnson's face hardened. "I'm on my way. Mobilize all available personnel for evacuation and containment." As the warden turned to leave, I found myself speaking up. "Sir, let us help. My team, we can assist with the evacuation." Johnson paused, studying me for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he nodded. "All right, Krixnakia, gather your team and report to the East Wing. But remember, this isn't a game. One wrong move and you could get yourself or someone else killed." "Understood, sir," I replied, already moving to action. The scene at the eastern perimeter was chaos incarnate. The ground itself seemed alive, writhing and buckling as massive sinkholes opened up, swallowing everything in their path. Human guards were frantically coordinating the evacuation, their voices barely audible over the groaning of stressed metal and the panicked cries of prisoners. My team and I threw ourselves into the fray without hesitation. Krax's tactical mind proved invaluable, quickly organizing our efforts to maximize efficiency. Thrix's strength and agility allowed him to reach prisoners trapped in precarious positions. And I found myself working alongside the human guards, my newfound knowledge of Earth's geology helping to predict where the next sinkhole might appear. Hours passed in a blur of sweat, dust, and adrenaline. We worked tirelessly, pulling people from the brink of disaster, shoring up failing structures, and battling against a planet that seemed determined to reclaim what we had built upon it. As the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow over the devastated landscape, we finally managed to stabilize the situation. The last of the prisoners had been evacuated, and emergency force fields were in place to prevent further collapse. Exhausted, covered in dirt and grime, I found myself standing at the edge of the largest sinkhole, staring into its depths. A hand on my shoulder startled me, and I turned to find Warden Johnson standing beside me. "Hell of a day, eh, Krixnakia?" he said, his voice tinged with both weariness and respect. I nodded, unable to find the words to express the tumult of emotions coursing through me. "You and your team did good out there," Johnson continued. "Saved a lot of lives today, human and alien alike." "We just did what needed to be done," I replied, echoing a phrase I'd heard humans use countless times. Johnson chuckled. "Now you're starting to sound like one of us." His expression grew serious. "You know, when we started this program, using Earth as a rehabilitation center for alien criminals, a lot of people thought we were crazy, said it was too dangerous, that we'd just be sentencing you all to death." He paused, gazing out over the ravaged landscape. "But days like today, they prove that we were right, that even the worst of you can find something here, something worth fighting for, something worth living for." As I stood there side by side with this human who had once been my jailer and was now something closer to a mentor, I felt a profound shift within myself. The fear and resentment that had driven me for so long were gone, replaced by a burning desire to prove myself worthy of this world and its people. Earth was still a death world, yes, but it was our death world now, and we would face whatever it threw at us together. Humanity. Fuck yeah, I whispered, the phrase no longer feeling foreign on my tongue. Johnson grinned, clapping me on the back. "Couldn't have said it better myself, alien. Now come on, we've got a prison to rebuild." As we turned away from the sinkhole, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, I realized that my rehabilitation was complete. Earth had broken me down, yes, but it had also remade me into something stronger, something better. And for the first time since my arrival on this brutal, beautiful world, I felt truly alive.